Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Talk Trackmania episode 31, I think. We are back once again as Tuesday as Let's Talk Trackmania time, and I'm joined once again by two lovely people to be discussing this week's events and I suppose some events that have been developing over the past few weeks. Some good, of course, finally. But of course, I am your host, TM Scotsman. I'm joined today by LuckersTurbo and Mr. Shorty. He is in his correct position, finally. He is in the middle, the second place. So all of you that have been sitting here hitting us with the jokes, we've got ahead of it. I suppose not, we've caught up on it, I suppose would be more accurate to say. But understand, well, I believe you said before we went live, you were out today, Turbo. How are you? What have you been up to today?
It was great. It was great today. I spent time with friends and I was also very productive. Did some university assignment. Did everything, was very productive. Yeah, I was doing great. But before we actually gonna start, I want to mention something because the podcast on YouTube have gotten a lot of views, guys. A lot of views. And we are live. We're doing this live on Twitch. You can find the link down in the description below. Just gonna mention it so that you can also hang around here. We're having a good time. You can post in your questions and then we can go through them because there is so many comments under them, also positive and negative, but that's fine, of course. If you have constructive feedback to that, that's always fostering the way. But yeah, I'm doing good, and I would love to see you guys, also the YouTubers, in the upcoming episodes on Twitch TV/TM Scotsman every Tuesday, 20 CEST. We are starting, and yes, I am doing very, very good. Nice weather in Germany, pretty hot though, but not as hot as Toby. Hello.
Yeah, pretty hot in here right now in our shared living because the internet is down and apparently it's gonna take a whole week until the internet is back up again. So mixed feelings today for me. I woke up to new internet, worked for 4 hours, now it's completely died out. Yeah, the discussions are great. We all are really happy right now, and yeah, we have a lot of issues, but that's something I have to think about when we are done with this. Especially how I do all my work stuff and everything. But great, it's gonna work one way or another. I don't know, but yeah, let's talk about Trackmania and not about boring internet problems.
Yeah, well, at least it's we can hope that finally the escapade of Shorty's internet issues will be solved eventually, or it's just going to be like Eirik and its technical problems. You know, he just breaks something every week or something like that. So maybe the curse of the third man has stayed, and that's what we're sitting with. But just also a reminder with today's podcast, as always, brought to you by ESAC. And just a reminder, there has been an announcement made that the hourly showdowns, which are on play.esac.gg, are now going to be featuring the campaign maps. So the official Nadeo campaign maps, and it will be maps 19, 20, 21, 22 and 23. So 5 maps will be available on your hourly showdowns, and keep your eye on the ESAC GG Twitter handle for any upcoming announcements on that, and we'll be sure to let you know in the podcast, of course, as well. But on to today's topics, today's content, this week's stories rather. One of the most important ones that has been in the build-ups over the last few weeks. However, as I'm sure a few of you have understood, as you have asked us frequently about some other topics, we have the World Cup, the TMWC return. It has been the open qualifiers which have started and concluded over the weekend which we have just passed, and we saw 8 players which proceeded through the open qualifier to meet 8 players which are then awaiting from the qualifications through the Trackmania Grand League positions. But guys, I mean, start me off with did you guys manage to get a watch of it? We had a few things, of course. We had some interesting players. Also had a little bit of a change up in the voice of who was bringing to us the Trackmania World Cup cast.
So yeah, I couldn't watch it live, but I was only lurking in. I had one break and I watched the second match. I watched my Muda, Brennan, Scrappy, and there was an absolute cracked match. So I was able to capture that live, and man, the matches were so good. I just have to stress that one out. Everyone who could have kind of deserved to go through, but unfortunately, we only had 8 players who went through. So for the people who don't know the format, we had a seeding, I think, where 64 players qualified, and then they played it out in a single elimination bracket where the top 8 So after the quarterfinals, the top 8 from the quarterfinals, or from all the finals, how they're called, went through. So 2 players per match there, and they will face against the other players who have qualified throughout the Trackmania Grand League. So that was great. But yeah, I enjoyed the cast. It was really good. Also, the synergy between Medic and Virtual was really great. But if you haven't watched the matches already, not only for the matches itself, but also for the commentary, very good. I really liked it. What about you, Toby?
Yeah, equally. I mean, I didn't watch it that much as well. I had some other things to do, but I definitely watched at least 1.5 matches, I think, and I definitely enjoyed it very much. I think you can definitely see that the further down we go right now, the more professional things like that are actually getting. I mean, Trackmania isn't really known to have professional events like that, and especially with the UI stuff and people actually understanding what's going on. I think that's way better now. And also the cast was amazing, as you said. I really liked it. I think no one really knew what we could ask from Medic and what we should expect from him maybe as well. And he did a really great job in my opinion, and I really enjoyed everything.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Paul?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was with the... I managed to catch on to especially the end matches, so the ones which were going to be qualifying people directly to the group stage, and it was definitely some really interesting matches, especially with, although some of the matches were more limited to almost people who haven't necessarily been directly involved in Trackmania Grand League, but others, the one you just mentioned there, Turbo, had 3 out of the 4 members as part of Trackmania Grand League. But one thing I found very interesting about it is it was showing that a lot of other people can definitely compete at that level, and it was really interesting, and I really did enjoy the matches themselves. They were really nice. In terms of the cast, it was definitely a good cast. I was happy to see that Medic hit the ground running. But I mean, as I would expect from someone who has a professional caster like him, this is a guy who's an extremely successful caster in other realms of esports, shall we say. I'd expect nothing less than a man coming in, fully prepared to know what he's talking about, and pulled off a great job as expected. So definitely credit where credit's due to Medic, even though it's his first time. Flying colours, of course, for him. In terms of the cast itself, I mean, I've not necessarily got many complaints there at all. I mean, a lot of people seem to enjoy it. You guys seem to enjoy it. So I think it was a really positive weekend in general for Trackmania in terms of that. And it's going to be interesting to see if we see more kind of events like this that are casted by an official English duo that have been, I suppose this one was, kind of put in place by Nadeo themselves, and it'll be interesting to see if the production value will kind of escalate along with the and the quality will continue to ascend, and hopefully we can see bigger and better things. I'm still going to say Gear Down Invitational had the best production value, but I am slightly biased, so that's fair. But yeah, guys, I mean, we do have 8 people who have qualified for the group stage. Now, for any who are not familiar, you have Default, you have Soldier from Numalops, you have Mudda from Edelweiss, Scrappy from Lazarus, Binks from Izzy Dream, Miquatro from Tauceti, Kappa from McLaren Shadow, don't know what I'm doing with my hands now, and Evon, formerly of Team Secret, and they will be joining people coming from Trackmania Grand League of Afi, Carl Jr., Pac, Spam, Aurel, Papu, Massa, and Gwen. So we've got a hell of a lineup, but if we talk about the ones that have only just qualified for this tournament, I mean, Shorty, these are some names which, me and you, I suppose, have competed against, infrequently over the years. What's your kind of impression of the 8-man lineup that's going forward to face against the TMGL boys?
I think just looking at the, I think just looking at the names, it's really gonna be very interesting. I think you could really see the level. I think most noteworthy is maybe that Scrappy actually managed to win against Mime, and I think the level in general on all is really high. And considering that someone as Scrappy that got 3rd in TMGL, almost lost in the qualification against someone as Mime, even though Mime is a really great player, right? But it just shows the level is there, and it just shows that even though half of the TMGL players are going to be playing, you can't really say, yeah, we have like those favorites. It's going to be very interesting, I think.
No, I can only agree with that, because we have seen some crazy matches, and all players are somewhat to cope the pressure. But let's say Belgium for the win, because every Belgian player from the quarterfinal has made it. Doford, Soldier, and Scrappy, and that is really great to see. I mean, Doford was maybe a bit unlucky throughout the head-to-head and all those things, so he didn't make it into that, but he was really, really great playing there, and nice seeing him together with Soldier. And yeah, to have to say something about Scrappy, the crazy comeback, knocking out Mime. So we had some great matches, and I think that the comparison between, like, let's say someone like Carl Jr. is playing against someone like Mi4 or Bings, we're gonna see that Carl Jr. versus Bings next season. But still, it's great to see that also the newcomers Soldier and Mi4 have qualified to that, and also someone who has already dropped out with Evon, so that he can also redeem himself. And I think that at least one of those players will go into the grand final. I think so, that one of those players will go into the grand final, because they just looked all very, very prepared, cope the pressure. I mean, they've played those maps. There are two new maps on there. I haven't seen them thus far, but still, it is just great to see that they have performed that way. So it will be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we come into, of course, the Trackmania World Cup, which is going to be coming up within the next few weeks, or at the end of the month, if I do remember it correctly, in terms of, it's going to be a little bit of a break, as exactly as Turbo said there. There's been 2 extra maps which have then been added. I've only actually seen one of them, a Turbo Stair or something like that it was called. I can't remember exactly.
Turbo?
But, I mean, claiming copyright here, but yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Of course, it will run along the same kind of theme which Trackmania Grand League maps do, but it'll be very interesting to see a mix of players which are already established in Trackmania Grand League coming through the open qualifier, and players who either have dropped out in Evon, or players who haven't actually been part of the Trackmania Grand League inner circle, likes Default, Soldier, and Mi4 and so on. Of course, Bink's now going to be getting his chance within the next season, but definitely interesting to see how these kind of players shape up against each other. And as you said there, I mean, some players who are going to be as part of this open qualifier group of 8 people are more than capable of reaching the grand final. I mean, considering this being more of a traditional cup mode tournament, having 4 slots in the grand final instead of 2, I mean, Mudda and Scrappy were 3rd and 4th, so definitely capable players there. However, I mean, coming into the cup mode, and we do have some other players who are, I would say, more specialists in the cup mode format. It does definitely suit them better than the traditional Trackmania Grand League format of having outright pace. So you're having players like Aurel and Spam and the final 16, which will definitely be interesting to see if this format will suit them any better than it has suited them through the other format. But just in terms of the competition itself, do you guys, we'll Turbo, for start of you, do you imagine there's going to be any difference in placements or player performance, given the fact that we're going to be playing virtually the same maps, with a few differences, but we're going to be playing it in a different format, as I said?
Yeah, I mean, this format, as you've mentioned, will suit a certain player base a bit better. And I think one player to really look out for is players by the name of Kappa and Scrappy. I think they can be really fast. And I think even if they're 20, 30, 40 points behind, the match is still not over, It's not the thing if you mess up 2 rounds in this other modes, in the Champions mode, I think it's called. You're dead. But, it's way more about finding your consistent, risky playing style. It's the mixture between that. So I think that's, of course, you have Carl Jr. and Pack. Yeah, they're 1st and 2nd. But I think after that, so that's my opinion, of course. After that, it will be very open, but also they can be beaten. They can also get beaten by a player who just fully risks it, and then there's another player also risking it and getting the round through. So we have seen a lot of great and crazy rounds this year already, more on tech tournaments, but also on those maps which are highly technical, not only on tech but also on other undergrounds. It will be close, but I think that the top placement will be the same. But for the other 2 spots in the grand final, we will see maybe a surprise or two.
I'm not voice crack. Hello. Yeah, I don't really know if there's gonna be much change. I mean, obviously, some people or some players excel more on driving risky and driving fast instead of trying to get consistent. But Trackmania in its current game and in the new game is basically forcing you to get more consistent, and I think the player base overall is getting more consistent. Just think about a player like Massa. You would, if you ever think about Massa, at least if we think about Massa, we think about someone that's full risks every single round, and if he crashes, he doesn't care. And he's basically playing TMGL for the third season right now, and it's a round-based format, so it's something where you would think that a player like Massa is completely unsuited for that. So in general, I think you can't really, at least the difference between people that are good on driving consistent and people driving less consistent but being more risky is definitely not as big as it used to be. So potentially Massa is going to do way better than he did in the Grand League. But in general, overall, I don't think I don't think it's going to be because of that. Maybe it changes because some people going to train more or be more motivated for that kind of format. But in terms of skill and differences of the format, I don't think it changes that much, maybe. At least not anymore.
Good call, actually. Good take. I think we have like two different views on that. But yeah, I mean, you were mentioning Massa, and I think also Scrappy goes into this direction of being an extreme fast player. But I think we're going to see that because the World Cup will take place, I think, in 1 month, actually, or like in 5 weeks. I think something it's the 4th of July. I think so, yeah. But I think it's a great lineup. Do you guys actually miss anyone in there? Did you guys expect that anyone else of the players who maybe were in the final matches on the open qualifiers would have actually made it? Or was there any surprise for you?
I think it's hard to say because you do obviously have that match with Bren getting eliminated along with Mime, where both players were looking phenomenal, but they were all stacked in a match of death, basically. So it's a bit difficult in that kind of side of things. But there were some players that I would have maybe expected a bit of a better performance from, to be a bit closer up to the top, challenging in finalists and things like that. But I think that, the players that we do have in front of us were going to be, pretty much the best you could have asked for out of the people who'd prepared a lot and out of the people who'd really, put the work in and that kind of side of things. I mean, I was... don't get me wrong, actually coming into the Trackmania World Cup, I hadn't actually read up a lot on the rule book yet, as of course we hadn't gotten to talking about it anyway. But one thing I actually didn't know about going into this is I thought it was just the top 8 from Trackmania Grand League that we're going through from last season, but actually the top 8 over the last 2 seasons of Trackmania Grand League, which I did find a little bit of a bizarre ruling. So you had someone like Mudda being excluded despite having a really good result, getting third. Scrappy, it was Scrappy or Mudda that got third and fourth, but neither of them got an automatic qualifier through to the Trackmania World Cup. Yet you have someone like Massa who got an automatic qualifier when he's not reached the playoffs yet. So, I mean, not necessarily like complaining or anything like that, but I just thought it was a little bit bizarre, seeing someone like Mudda and Scrappy fighting for it. And the only reason, let's be honest, Mudda was fighting for it is because he wasn't in TMGL last season, the season before, sorry. But yeah, I mean, I think the lineup we've got is really, really solid. But one thing I was curious to think about to get an idea of what you guys think about is if you look at it, one thing I did observe in the qualification matches is that it seemed to be very, very dependent on the maps and the map order. Like you saw certain players excelling on certain maps, and these are very, very difficult maps to deal with, with the identities, very difficult identities to pull off, and some players really exploiting that by really maximizing what they can get on a particular identity and getting a lot of points from that map as a result. So do you think now that we change to a more rounds type format, you are going to have people who might, hunt a singular map instead or something like that?
I mean, you always have that a map is suiting a player better or worse. We had that in also tag competitions, but I think here it's actually particularly the case because someone is better on dirt, someone can cope with the identity better, this and that and this, and I think that people will play one map, so it could actually rely on the map order. But I mean, you don't win a match by just one map, right? I mean, you can, of course, be lucky that you have 90 points, you win 4 rounds in a row, and you knock someone out who's finalist. Yeah, this can happen. But you should not rely it on that. You should not rely it on that. And I think that, people should practice the other maps as well, of course, and not only rely it on one map. But it's a good take because, I mean, maybe, Shorty, you can give us a little bit more of an insight because, I mean, you were, let's say, practicing in the German Trackmania Cup. Maybe we can compare that a bit. You also had the feeling that you were better on a map compared to another map, that you just put more practice into that and you had a disadvantage in some way? Or how did you feel about that?
Yeah, definitely. That's always the case. Especially now with maps being multi-style, obviously you have to bring certain skills for certain maps. And if a map is built around a very difficult or rather difficult dirt turns, for example, where you have to keep your gear and you're just not really good at that, then you can train a lot, but it just doesn't make you good at it all of a sudden. So we had like one map where you had this really difficult uphill where you had to keep your gear. I never kept my gear pretty much. Or it was just something that for me felt random because I had no real... I couldn't get it consistently, for example, on that map. And on other maps, obviously, then it felt like natural to me. I mean, obviously, my own map, anything else wouldn't make sense, right? I built it myself. I only built. Obviously, you build something that you like yourself, and what do you like? You like things you're good at, obviously, or at least often. So yeah, I was really good on that map in general. Yeah, sometimes it's weird because sometimes even though you train a particular map more than a different map, you just still end up being completely shit on that map. You train for hours and hours longer. It's sometimes weird, or at least that's how it felt for me back in the days when like tag competitions and stuff. You just like before a tournament, I wouldn't know which map is my best one. Obviously, I would know which map I think I'm the fastest on. But then when it comes to rounds and you don't train in time attack only anymore, all of a sudden things just change, and then it's not about how fast can you get something, but then it depends how consistently can you get something good. And that does change up maps quite a bit. But yeah, to come back to your original question a bit more, now with definitely the maps differ way more than they used to be, and obviously because the maps differ more, the differences for the players are also bigger. So it's just something you can in theory train it, right? But we are still more or less young about those kind of things, and some things you just can't really train, and you're just naturally better at them, and that just shows on those kind of maps more, I think.
Yeah, I think especially with the way the identities come about, it does definitely amplify the efforts people put into these maps. Just to expand on the point I originally made, because one thing that really stood out to me in the Combine, for example, was how much better Evon was at the end of reversing than anyone else. He got the nickname of the Polish sniper because he sniped so many round wins off of how good he done the ending of reversing compared to other people. You have some people who have specifically nailed a certain identity. So I think how the players drive the identities is probably going to be the most important part of how the general kind of the training goes into this. I mean, because these players are all top level players. There's not a weak player out there. There's not a player out there who isn't versatile. They've certainly very, very heavily skilled. I mean, each and every one of them. Some of them, of course, will lean a bit more to being a risky player, being a player that's going to, be going for round wins. You have players who are much more consistency focused, as I was saying, prime examples being, Afi, Spam, Morel, being players who are going to be, capitalizing on any mistakes people made, but otherwise always putting on the pressure on first place and all the like of that. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see, how the how the matches get made up, who progresses through and who they get matched up against. It's gonna be an interesting bracket as far as from bottom to top in that regard. And as we said, I mean, we've seen how much difference an identity can make. I mean, Arctic Split, when you were seeing so many people crashing it. No, it might not have been Arctic Split, but the one where you had to jump and kind of go through in between some blocks, we see a lot of people crashing on that, and it's just goes to show how important the identity is on the just on these type of maps in general. It's not the focus is on these particular parts of the track. But if we think of it this way, do we look at I forget which TMGL it was, whether it was just a beta edition or there was one after that, but we actually saw Scrappy coming second in the last time there was this kind of format used, just behind Carl Jr. actually. Did come runner up to that. If it was winter 2020, but the last time the rounds format was used, a cup modes format was used, Scrappy performed very well, and there's definitely a lot of players out there who this can really shake up a bit. But how do you feel now about the fact that we've kind of figured out a lot of the, how the Trackmania Grand League maps are getting constructed and things like that, but also merging it with the more traditional tournament format, which has been seen throughout the many years of competitive and the years before? How do you think this is going to compare to the other kind of system which we've normally seen? Is there any expectations there, or do you think it's going to lead to much the same kind of pages being written?
Well, yeah, in the Trackmania Grand League, I was talking to a lot of TMGL players, so that you kind of, especially to pack, you kind of have to find a risky line throughout the whole track and drive it safe for 6 rounds. Push it too much, but don't go out of your comfort zone. And I think now players, they have to adapt their playing style, because in a rounds format, you have one round where really it depends. It doesn't matter if you crashed the round beforehand. It's the 1 minute of driving that really matters. So I think that the people have to, or the players have to, pick up more risky lines and get them into their repertoire. But I also think that they can adapt their playing style a little bit more by looking onto the CP times, as they have done it before as well. So I think it's definitely different, and I think we can also see different outcomes. I mean, the best example was Scrappy that you have mentioned there, by finishing second in winter 2020. It was a great performance. I mean, he was just behind Carl Jr. there. Yeah, Carl Jr. was first, of course. No, I mean, he's the greatest of all time. He's doing very well. And I think that this will reward players who can just utilize and use risky lines more than consistent drivers like Afi, Spam, you name them, right?
I mean, it's an easy math question, right? If you get first and fourth, you still get more points than getting second twice. So Obviously, you don't care about crashing, right? It doesn't matter if you crash. You just want to win those rounds, and if you're getting fourth on a round where you just saved it, it's basically the same as if you would have full risked it.
Yeah. Goodbye.
Definitely, you can risk more. You can maybe even go for lines you wouldn't do otherwise. Definitely.
Yeah, can I get the gist of what he was saying there? And it does make sense that the approach does need to change when you are playing the same maps but in a different way. It's not the regular season where you need to focus almost solely on consistency. It's not the champions format where you can really afford to go all out and risk, because we've seen that sort of thing. I mean, one of the prime examples I say of that kind of approach was always Massa. So you can have an approach where you will go all out and you will go for round wins each and every time. And as much as you kind of say it doesn't really matter if you crash, one thing which is really important when you do think of that sort of approach is momentum and the kind of mentality of that approach. One thing that's been that was always the same with Massa when he was going into these big tournaments, when he went for his streak and early, I think it was from like 2015 to 2017 of reaching every LAN final. There was one thing that was always a constant. If Massa got to the ground running and he got off to a good start, he would plough through, anyone. It didn't matter who was in the final with him, if it was Carl Jr., if it was Kappa, if it was Pac, he would be able, when he's hitting a high level of momentum, he is a very, very difficult driver to stop. But on the other hand, if he gets off to a bad start or his momentum gets halted, then it's a completely different player. It's a completely different man to race against. Someone who was making mistakes frequently when he wasn't hitting his momentum, going for that all out. And, when you're at such low margins of error, making mistakes can really, get you in your own head, so to speak. And that's why, I'll be very interested to see if any of these players adapt their approaches going into this. I mean, we've seen Pac, still being a lightning fast player, but maintain a level of consistency. The same with Carl Jr., albeit more consistency based for him, being a real specialist of the 6-lap format and things like that. But yeah, I mean, one other which I feel like we've not talked about in a while that I think will be really interesting for this is Gwen. I mean, Gwen, when he wants to, when he's got the time to, has shown that he can be one of the very best players on these tracks and in these kind of formats, through his many, cup mode tournaments that he's played, miscellaneous cups or other events, what was it, Spheres Cup, I think he done really well at. I can't even really remember now, to be honest. But yeah, still a very good performer, at many different kind of events, even back when he played tech tournaments and cup mode, he's got a lot going for him, certainly. But I'm looking forward to the Trackmania World Cup. But one thing which I thought was an interesting topic in terms of this. Now, I think it was mentioned during the cast with Virtual and Medic, albeit in a kind of little bit of a weird way, but other people have kind of been talking about it recently. So, since the loss of the original TMWC in 2018, there's not necessarily been a recognised world champion since then. The last world champion, as far as many people are concerned, is Kappa from 2018. Before that, Pac from 2016. Now, from here, do you imagine that going forward, be it Trackmania Grand League or this World Cup in general, is going to go any further to people recognising the winner of this event as a world champion, or do you still think we're a little bit of a way off of that?
Well, I mean, the world champion was always claimed in a tech tournament. We always had a prestigious competition for that. And that's not the case, but I mean, we're talking about so often the shift of Trackmania into multi-style. And I think that's the case as well. And for me, kind of, not the world champion is Carl Jr. right now, but it's like, it's just a different time, Trackmania is developing, and with that in mind, we just not have a world champion. We have a Trackmania Grand League winner. And I think now with the playoffs, with a lot of prize money, also with that open qualifier, that every player can participate to that and can register and play, I think with that, you could compare it with that, but I'd not say that this is the same or is as prestigious as a like sheer tech event where just all the tech names have played to. I think it's just something different, actually.
Yeah, it's gonna take time, right? We don't have a big tech tournament anymore, and it doesn't really make sense to just host one and say you're the best tech player and you're gonna be the world champion, because now the game obviously has so much more to offer in terms of multi-style compared to before. It's not gonna happen that way. I think it's just gonna take a couple of years maybe, and then people will always naturally call the world champion the one that wins the World Cup. I mean, it's basically named like that already. So you can think about maybe the problem of having TMGL next to it as well, a bit, because it's kind of, I don't know. But I mean, TMGL is twice a year, and the World Cup is just once a year. I think, or at least how I'm gonna approach it is I'm just gonna look at the results of the World Cup. That just
Goodbye.
See you later. But I mean, if I can follow on from that and kind of ask a general question, Turbo, on the basis of how you answered that, does Trackmania need a world champion anymore?
Well, I don't think so, actually, because there's so much versatile styles, and I think measuring a world champion in Trackmania is also very hard to do because everyone has a kind of best style, or as you have mentioned, it could only be like a good map or something. So yeah, a world champion, of course, measures it really good, but maybe someone has not participated, but you can always justify it like that. But yeah, maybe not call it world champion. I mean, it's now the World Cup, yeah, but yeah, you need that title, and it was there for so long. So I'm like in a bit of a struggle right now because I'm saying this, and then there was the past from that, and I think holding up to the past with this event being there once a year, as Shorty has mentioned as well, is more prestigious. I think that actually, yeah, it could make sense to have a world champion, and it's important to have that because you can just say, yeah, world champion of 2021, and that's me. But it's not me in tech. It's me on multi-style on Trackmania Grand League maps.
Mhm.
It's weird, but maybe you have a different opinion about that.
I think it's really strange now how I can how I can present how I think this is a very difficult question to answer. So when we crowned grand champions before, or world champions, whichever it is you would call them, world champions, I suppose. Before, it was on one singular style, and that was tech. You know, it had been that since 2006, and it was that until 2018, with only one or two breaks in between. I think in 2009 it was crowned for the World Cyber Games, and 2017 it wasn't crowned at all. But in terms of the World Championship, how I find it difficult, and one thing which really opened my... Well, no, I kind of knew about it before, but I think a good analogy for this is when we were discussing the competitive open map pool, there was always a discussion to have a mixed competitive open map pool, and that would be a map pool which would be bringing in, you know, multiple different styles. Now, going at it from a mapper's point of view and trying to think of a specific type of map was very difficult when I think of multi-style, and I'll tell you why I think that. So you need to make up a map pack for a multi-style tournament, say 5 maps, right? You know, what do you do when a lot of the maps you end up being are virtually a mix between tech and dirt? You know, what do you do when a lot of the maps you end up getting are a mix between, you know, dirt and RPG or something like that? Because if we're honest, the Trackmania Grand League maps, bar their identities, have all followed very similar themes. They've all been either, you know, tech-based or they've been dirt-based. That's been the, you know, with some other things like ice, you know, maybe a bit of grass and things like that. But it doesn't incorporate other styles frequently. I mean, I don't think there's ever been a speed slide in Trackmania Grand League. You know,
I think one.
Yeah, well, one.
I mean, you're speed sliding on dirt and grass nowadays. So technically, they are speed slides already.
But if we look into the usage of styles throughout it and the traditional kind of styles, you know, tech, dirt, full speed, and RPG, it's been 2 main styles which have been really focused on within the past few years of Trackmania Grand League maps. Now, why I'm trying to bring this all in and why I was linking it to the open map pool is it gives me a bit of difficulty in even thinking how we would present a map pack for a mixed style tournament. Okay, now if you're wanting to crown a world champion in a mixed style tournament, what happens if the maps you ended up getting were very dirt heavy? You have someone like Papu in there who's arguably one of the greatest dirt players of all time. You have someone like Afia in there who's also one of the greatest dirt players at the very least recently. You know, if the maps are, you know, more full speed heavy, you know, or more ice heavy, you have someone like Mudda having a fantastic chance. You know, maybe more RPG, maybe more messed up kind of styles like Zerator style. You have someone like Gwen, you know, having a much better kind of chance at this. So I think it's very, a very interesting question in the terms of whether or not it's needed anymore. And I kind of agree with you. It might not be needed, but I don't think it's really possible to crown a world champion at the moment in multi-style, at least until we properly figure out, what a multi-style map pack means. I mean, it just kind of take it from there as Shorty, leaves us once again. But, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see if that gets addressed going forward, like, it gets more recognised as a world championship, or if people see a resource influx to a certain tournament, like they see a higher prize pool, if they'll see that as the world championship, if they'll see this as a world championship just because it's cup mode format or something like that. But on the other hand, you could look back at the old times and say it wasn't really a world championship because it was only on one style, so there's many kind of trains of thought that can go into that there. But I mean, nevertheless, the World Cup is going to be a very interesting tournament to watch, regardless of whether it's just going to be the winner of the World Cup or if it's going to be a world champion.
But I mean, it's always like that. You always have a map that suits someone better, and you can't just be in that moment. I get your point that you want to not focus a map heavily on just one style, but it's like almost impossible to build a multi-style map in that regard. But yeah, I think so that this could be the trend for the next part. I mean, I've seen that. Let's say the French Championship in 2020. We had a dirt section, a full speed section, a tech section. Dirt, full speed, tech. It was like starting with dirt, then it went into full speed, and then into tech, or other way around. But that was great to see. But I think we're not seeing these maps because there are also those identities in there. And those maps are also like a bit, not monotone, but they were really unique in this way. And I think it's hard to really replicate them, let's say like that, else they will be a bit monotone. I don't know, but it's always hard to have that because every player is better in one style. Let's just take maybe Moda is behind 0.5 of a second, and then we're going to go into the full speed section, and then he's 10 seconds ahead all of a sudden. So it will always be like that. And yeah, you have always a better part. And of course, it's a bit luck based, but you can minimize the luck by just practicing every map and every part that you cannot do over and over, I think.
If you're talking about crowning a world champion, I think it's less about having a cup that wants to crown a world champion. It's more about having a cup. It's more about that the cup itself should be prestigious enough to be perceived as the main cup, And that's just something the scene, or at least right now, is not the case with the World Cup. Maybe it's because most people still would prefer tech. Maybe it's because people still don't really enjoy or dislike maybe the identities, or I don't know why, but that's pretty much the fact, Like if it would be, if it's just the community opinion about the event, and if the main player base all agrees that this is the most prestigious event, then they would call the winner world champion themselves already, It just has to work from that direction. You can't just say, oh, we're going to host this cup and the winner's going to be world champion. You just can't decide it. Even Adeo can't decide it. I mean, Adeo can decide it, but the community can disagree. You know what I mean? That's how it's how it has to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's very kind of weird how it works. I mean, personally, if I could have a dream kind of multi-style tournament back, I'd bring back the old SEL that was ran by DDE and Frostpool, actually. That's how long ago it was, But that was always something I really enjoyed, although that was less multi-style, as in, I feel like multi-style now is just kind of more mashing things together, so to speak. But back in that, at least, style of tournament, it was having defined sections that would suit certain players better. And I always found that really interesting to watch, because you would see, I remember there was a specific map that had a full speed ending on it. And you would see someone like Pac or I don't know, Cap or something like that quite far ahead. And then you would see Infernal coming in from, 0.4 of a second behind and catching up through the full speed section. You'd be able to track them because they're going to catch up, And it's interesting to watch, but are they going to overtake? Is Pac going to be able to figure out a bit of a speed slide, that kind of thing? I always thought SEL was fantastic to watch. But again, that might be a bit of, my own kind of personal bias or rose-tinted glasses or whatever you'd like to call it. But, I liked a lot of the old kind of style of tournaments and the way they kind of done it. It was a lot simpler, and, you know, I don't know. I kind of liked that a little bit more that way. Same with like the Four Styles Cup, for example. I had defined sections where, you know, there was a tech section, you know, a dirt section, a full speed section, you know, an RPG section, and then its own identity, if you'll call it that. You know, I really enjoyed the Four Styles Cup, even though Shorty beat me in the last one. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was. Yeah, I just thought it was a really kind of interesting kind of focal point for this. But I mean, as is always the kind of standard through us talking about these sort of tournaments, we need to give a little bit of an idea of who we think's going to be taking home, shall we say, a top three. Name me 3 players, guys, that are going to be in the grand final. Who do you think?
Pack, Carl Jr., Scrappy.
Oh, he's going for the full 4.
Why do you want us to give 3 names for a final when there are like 4 people playing the final? We could just make like we could just name 4, you know.
You can't. You get one name of leeway, so you don't need to name an exact grand final. That's what I was thinking.
I'm stumbling between Mi Quattro and Kappa actually for the 4th one.
Wow. What about you, Shorty?
I'm gonna say Carl, Peck, and Kappa.
Right.
I want to see Kappa there. I just want to see him there.
Same, and he can definitely make it.
Yeah.
Also, Muda was very strong. Massa as well. Oh, it's so hard. Gwen. Oh. Okay, I'm not.
I don't think Massa is gonna be in the final.
He can though. If he's unstoppable.
Yeah, of course he can.
Yeah. I mean,
pretty much all of them can.
Yeah. I know. Give us your top 3 in the chat. That would be great. Or top 4.
I'm thinking Carl Jr. Pack, and one that none of you have mentioned, Papu, Goldberg himself.
Okay.
I think he's going to speed his way through the group stage, to be honest.
Oh, wow.
Jackhammer everyone else.
Papu's
always... I mean, Eirik always said that Papu was the most underrated player ever, and he was definitely getting to that stage over the last, shall we say, a year ago, where people were finally rating him really highly. And now I think he's started to fly under the radar again, despite being an incredible player. So, I don't know, Papu, my money's on you.
What about Gwen, though? Why are we not going for Gwen?
I don't know. Maybe we just hate young people. No one went for Evon either.
Yeah, he's just so good. I'm just kind of annoyed by him, you know.
Yeah.
Like every time he plays Cup of the Day, he drives the time within like 2 minutes. It is already Division 1, and I'm just sitting there and I'm like, yo, what? Just it's at a point where you just don't understand it.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. But yeah, I think that it is a wild mix, and also a player like Carl Jr. or Pack or players like them, they are not safe. Especially not in this format. If they play against Gwen, Massa, Scrappy in a semi-final, they can just completely get rolled over. It could happen, and I think it could be. I'm not gonna forecast it here or jinx it, but it could be one of the first events ever where we cannot see, or where we will not see Carl Jr. in the final. I doubt that this will happen, but I think here it's most likely, than compared to other events.
When was the last time that happened?
I don't know, 2005? I don't know. Dude, Carl Jr. is in every grand final.
The thing is about Trackmania, if you think about it, because we got the cup mode, and in general, except like, of course, like in the early stages, sometimes a player like really has a big lead, but often it just always comes down to those last few rounds where everyone is pretty much finalist or is like 1 round away from finalist, and then it's just a game in your head pretty much. It doesn't matter how much you trained, because all of them are definitely trained anyway, because otherwise they would be there, obviously. But at that point, it's less about who's the better driver. It's more about like who is just better in those kind of situations, right? And that's the reason why someone as Pack, as Carl Jr., they are always winning those finalist rounds, and that's just something that they can do, and it doesn't matter against who it is, you know. That's what kind of like makes a difference in the end, and that's why I think like someone of Carl Jr. is definitely gonna be in the final again, because even if it's gonna be close and it's always going to be close in Trackmania with the points limits and stuff. He's just going to clutch it out anyway. That's how it's going to go, most likely.
But the competition is way harder this time. But yeah, I think you're right there. And also, when you were saying, yeah, it comes always down to the ending, there's a play that's really is sticking out to me when you're speaking about that. And it's, again, he's not in here, but Coco. Coco is unbelievably sick in that. If you think about the French Trackmania Cup 2020, he was at 60 points or something, with a point limit of 130. Gwen was finalist already, and he got second position. Or also, I think the Solary Cup, he almost sniped Aurel out from the final away. So yeah, he was very good in that, but of course he has unfortunately not made it. We have other players who have made it, and yeah, I don't know who will that be. So we're gonna check.
I mean, another kind of player for just kind of, you know, almost theory craft in there that I thought would have been really good for that is one who was historically always very, very reliable, even if he got, you know, a kind of knock early, was Tween. And unfortunately, he's not going to be here, as he was one I actually forgot when we were saying if someone was missing, and it was Mr. Parker himself. I mean, you would always see from Tween, he would get knocked down to the lower bracket at some point. You know, it could have been early, it could have been late, but he would always make it through at least the consolidation final and many times the grand final as well. It was always super interesting to see Tween compete, and I want to see new people like Tween. You know, I want to see new Tweens, I want to see new Cocos and so on. I mean, Coco's been around for a very, very long time as well. Also on the you know, a little fun fact, if anyone didn't know about it, this was something I did know before but forgotten, that I found in a little Trackmania quiz that they'd been a part of, and it was that Coco is one half of the only ever duo of brothers to compete in a LAN event grand final, and he competed with his brother Ludo in a Canyon grand final. I believe it was a Gamers Assembly Canyon grand final again, or ESWC maybe it was, against Onyo and Klovny, I want to say. So yeah, I mean, a little fun fact there about Coco. But yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see, because we have a lot of new players in there who haven't really been tested at the top level in this kind of format as well. We've got some old hands going back to something they might be a bit more comfortable with, but definitely we're going to see a few position shake-ups than what we would have seen if you know, things had remained the same. But yeah, I mean, we're almost 50, well, we're over 50 minutes deep, and we've only kind of talked about one thing. There's a few other parts of Trackmania's landscape which have been popping off a little bit over the past week or two, and I suppose it all kind of conglomerates into one topic. Of course, one we discussed over the last week or two had been the cheating scandal from Trackmania. Of course, you know, a few well-known players have been caught out for cheating using Cheat Engine itself, using things like slowing down the physics of the game, not slowing down the physics of the game, slowing down the playback of the game pretty much, so that you could make finer inputs to allow themselves to get more precision and so on. But another one came out within the next few days and was kind of addressed as part of the video made by, was it Carl Jobst, if I remember correctly? He made a video which was also following up from an admission by Trabadia that he had cheated his extremely well-renowned AO1 record, you know, beating what a lot of people thought was possible. Originally, the world record was, I think, a 23.86 or 8.7, of which he eventually reached a 23.83, which people didn't think was possible until they saw it tasked to 8.0. But yeah, Trabadia came out and after being I believe he was approached that his run was deemed suspicious, and as such he responded to releasing a Twitter statement and a YouTube video, which were both quickly either deleted or made private, admitting to the fact that he had used, I believe it was some sort of macro to automate part of his run to enable himself to have more consistent attempts at the the coveted time he was looking for. But we saw quite a little bit more drama to that, and I guess, Turbo, by your reaction, you know quite a bit about what had at least been going on with Travadia.
Well, yeah, I was streaming at this point, and people were sending me this video. I was like, you got to be joking me. So top 1 and top 2 on A01 race, literally, I think the first track for me that I've ever played in Trackmania, those times are cheated. And, well, I was just in shock because, you know, it seems that he has recorded, I'm not sure how he exactly did it, but maybe he has recorded a macro to replicate his speed slide, so the steering angle and the brake movement. I have no idea. Maybe Shorty, you know more about that. Maybe you can confirm that. I think he has done it like this.
I can't really confirm it because we don't know how he did it, but that's definitely like the way I would do it. Maybe that's a bad way of phrasing it, but you know what I mean. Yeah, basically he just got a macro that pushed the button at the specific speed, and maybe also like a different maybe the macro even started with the brake tab, so the brake tab would have been perfect as well. It's definitely something you can automate. Because it's like one speed drift, and I think the speed of the speed drift it's not that long of a speed slide, I think, in terms of like how long speed slides can be. So and it's actually TM Forever, and in TM Nations Forever speed sliding works a bit different compared to Mania Planet and the new game. So yeah, you can definitely automate it, and that's pretty much what he did, or what he said he did. So
yeah, but I mean his video was so like creepy, let's say like that, but in a positive way. But it seemed that he really had some, I don't want to say it, but he was also stating it in his tweet longer, some issues with that by just achieving perfectionism or perfection. And I think he has played this map for, was it 1,000 hours, 100 hours, something like a ridiculous amount of numbers.
1,000.
Yeah, and he wanted to just like get the perfect run through, and with that the pressure was on, and he just wanted to do it because he was just thinking about that and wanted to do that. So it was a bit shocking to see, to be honest, when I was hearing that this time was cheated as well, because I was thinking that he is a clean player, because he also had I think a good online record, and he also claimed that his 86 that he has driven, where he didn't save the replay, was legit or something like that.
Yeah, I guess it now kind of all goes with a little bit of a stain now, as much as it did with some of the other players who've been caught up in this scandal. And I mean, as far as I understood from the video, he would send his replays over to Donadigo, and Donadigo would then extract the replays from, you know, if he'd done a particularly good speed slide, for example, and then he would then Donadigo would send him back a list of inputs, which is kind of like it's kind of like going to the police and telling them you're going to commit a crime, almost. I don't really... Looking back at that, I'm kind of thinking, like, you've went to the man who can analyse your inputs and asked him to check your inputs. And I think after a few times of asking that, you'd be a little bit like, yeah, that's... Why do you keep asking me for this, you know? But don't get me wrong, there could of course be an innocent explanation for this, but or at least an innocent explanation if, you know, you were looking at that situation another way. But I thought it was a really messy situation with how he came out with it and all the rest of that. But not only that, of course, if we kind of expand the story a little bit. So he came out and admitted he had cheated his AO1 replays, admitted he cheated quite a few of his AO1 replays. And I want to know how I'm not getting one of those emotes, bass. I'm going to submit a formal complaint. But yeah, he came out with all the rest of this, you know, admitting that he cheated, putting up a video, putting up a big twit longer about how, you know, he'd affected his mental health so deeply that he felt like he almost had no choice. But, fuck it, that'll do. But yeah, I mean, he also then, it was coming out through, you know, kind of Discord scripts and through kind of murmurings on people's streams that he had in fact cheated to not an insignificant degree in solo campaigns. So he had used the slow-mo cheat as well, which he then done another post to admit to later on. So I don't know. Like, seeing the first isolated information, I will be honest with myself, with you guys, and with everyone in the chat. My natural reaction to people in this situation isn't immediately sympathy. You know, my natural reaction isn't to immediately sympathize with someone that's got themselves so obsessed with a singular track that they have severely impacted their mental health, as what he had put down there, especially when it gets to the point where you are cheating to attain something which you are obsessed with, or something. I mean,
that you couldn't reach without the cheats, or maybe like just in 10,000 hours, maybe.
Yeah. Because I mean, it goes back to the kind of thing. Like, I don't even know if his situation, you could say it like this, because if you will believe what he says, that his best legit time was either equal to the current world record or a slight bit ahead of that, and that he would then be able to assume that he would then be able to reach a bit further than that, you know, like a considerable bit further than anyone else had reached. And as such, pardon me, it reminded me of the kind of, a kind of loose way of saying the saying of, cheaters cheat to get times they feel they deserve, you know. And I can imagine that especially in Trackmania. Oh, I was so far ahead of my time there. I was on world record pace. So you feel like you deserve that time, you know. So I can see how this path can start, but I don't see anyone actually going through that, which was something I was very surprised to hear about. You know, it was something I was very surprised about. But you spoke a little bit about how you were kind of surprised at the fact it was cheated overall, but how did you feel when he's came out, he's admitted to it, the community's kind of in the, like either love him or hate him stage, you know, depending on how they feel about it. But then it comes out he cheated more, but he didn't. He then came out with another admittance to it. How did you guys feel about that?
Yeah, so I mean, there are two different things, because I think, yeah, I mean, is it different? Also, people were saying it on the YouTube comments, and I can understand that. Of course, it was a bit rough said from someone who has cheated. So I've cheated, of course, I've admitted to that in 5 to 6 cases. You know, my times were not that significant. I can understand that people want me to get a punishment from that. I also would live with that, not getting a permanent ban. I think this would not be that fair that I get so let's say Riolu gets a permanent ban because he cheated, and I also get a permanent ban. I think this would not be like in one relation to each other. I would take like a temporarily ban. That would be very fair, but I'm not sure if there will be any consequences. But if so, I'm just gonna take them because it was dumb behavior. And in the Trabadia's case, it was like that. It were two different things, because AO1 was kind of his, like, he was obsessed with that. It was his maybe demon, and the other things were like, okay, I just wanted to try that, but maybe they are addressing the same issue, that he wanted to be the best or one of the best players, because slow-mo cheating is definitely something that you should not exploit, because you can get obsessed with that. And also that's why I tried it on several maps, and I fortunately stopped with that. I don't have had those issues, because I would never like drive a top 10 time and then say, yo, I did that time. I would never do that. I just wanted to try it out. But he did it on a more serious note, because he had good times on island maps, on other environments. So yeah, it's a bit weird, because it was not him. He was getting approached from Mr. Donadigo, and that's like the difference compared to someone else who maybe just admitted it in his own way of saying, yeah, you know what, I cheated, and not getting busted at first. So that is like, maybe you get the point out of that. Hopefully it was a little bit understandable, but yeah, it's weird. Yeah,
it really is weird, right? I mean, if you already come out as a cheater, then might as well reveal everything. I mean, what do you have? Why would you try and hide something? I mean, he wrote so much. It wasn't like, oh yeah, by the way, I also cheated, sorry. It was like that whole passage where it felt like, oh yeah, he's genuinely, he understands what I don't really care about that, at least considering like the consequences at least. But you could like tell from reading that you felt like, yeah, he understood what he did. I mean, he even wrote that he consulted like a psychologist already. So I'm like, yeah, sure, mate. Maybe you kind of need that. So good that he's already like in touch with someone for that. And then it's like a couple of days later, oh yeah, by the way, I also cheated other stuff after like people found that out. It's like, yo, mate, like why would you? Why I just can't, I can only shake my head about it. I just don't understand why you would do that. It just doesn't make sense at all to me. Yeah, just very weird indeed.
It's hard to say. I mean, like I look at as I said, my immediate reaction isn't sympathy in this situation. I do have a measure of sympathy, but it's not what I immediately go to when I heard about his initial situation. However, when we saw how it developed, I gradually began to feel significantly more negatively about it, in the sense that it came out that, of course, that he cheated the AO1 record. He then kind of fell back to kind of claim that certain times he'd driven were legit, certain times he did state in that tweet longer that he didn't use the slow-mo cheat for AO1 in particular. However, this was his opportunity to come clean about everything, because what's then happened there is he's then done his admittance, done his repentance, he's came out to the community to tell them what he's done wrong. However, he's only told them one thing he done wrong, and then it's taken the people who knew about it. I believe Virtual and Donna Deagle both kind of released a little thing or spoke a little bit about it, to then come out and say, by the way, that's not true. And to me, I wouldn't necessarily think someone like him would be going from a manipulation angle, but it's definitely damage limitation. Like, let's hope if I admit to cheating this one thing, then they're going to leave me alone, and that'll be it. That'll be my crime paid for, so to speak, and hoping the rest kind of flies under the radar. And I think that's a really, really low thing to do. Now, he then claimed later on that it completely slipped his mind, and either he didn't think it was important, or he completely forgot about the fact he'd either done that, or that he should have admitted that in the first place, which is bullshit. I'll be happy to say that.
Yep.
I'm not afraid about getting called out. In my opinion, it's bullshit. You don't just forget about the fact that you've been cheating, especially if they've mentioned to you about the fact that they know you're cheating. You don't just forget about that, especially in the midst of the biggest cheating scandal in Trackmania's history by a very long margin. You don't just forget about that. I'm not buying that. I'm not one of the fucking mindless fucking simps that will say, oh yeah, sure, Trabadia, I'll fucking throw money at you when you come back to YouTube or some shit like that. No, not having that. Like, I think it's been a really kind of scummy thing for him to do. Don't get me wrong, I imagine he's been in quite a very weird mental state, and this is something that I'd actually like to bring in with something Phoebe said just there, but also something I knew about previously through that had been put up on Reddit and things like that. So Phoebe said there that Trabadia reached out to her to notify her or report a cheater to her, as he was upset, or seemed upset rather, or upon someone beating him. And also you'd seen in previous months, years, Riolu reporting people who had cheated to get certain times. And I'm just trying to put myself in their shoes, having the gall to report cheaters to people when you're cheating is such a far. I can't even properly put it into words how distasteful I find that kind of conduct. I really can't put it into words how horrible I kind of find that way of acting. I mean, we would say in Scotland, to have that kind of gall to do something like that, it really, really says a lot about what these, I don't know whether you would say the character or the mentality of these kind of people. And much love to R2K. Very nice to see you, my friend. Hope you're doing well. A little bit of a blast from the past there. But anyway, I'm not calling you old, so don't fight me. But I mean, we talk about everyone from the UK in here is old, so don't worry about it. But we talk about this, I want to get your guys' kind of thoughts on this. I mean, we look at the mentality of if I'll isolate the cases of Techno, Riolu, and Trabadia in particular. Trabadia reporting cheaters despite the fact he cheats himself. coming out and then trying to essentially get away with slow-mo cheating, you know, whatever it is. Then Riolu, you know, calling people out for cheating, yet cheating himself. You also have Techno, who tried to justify the fact that he was cheating by saying, oh, I only cheated because these other people cheated. You know, what does that say about these people's mental state, the way they approach this game, the way they kind of rationalize these sort of decisions? Because one of the key parts for dealing with these sort of decisions is, the redemption arc, if we'll call it something cheesy like that, is the rehabilitation. How these guys, if, you know, of course, permanently banning people seems to be something that some people want to do. Whether I agree with that or not is not the point at the moment. But there is going to be some sort of rehabilitation for these people in terms of how they approach situations like this in general in their fucking life, or how they deal with Trackmania if they do get allowed to play the game in future. I mean, how do you deal with this when you're having people who are so much more in a different mental track as to how they approach these situations than we are?
Yeah, I think it's a good point. It's a good point, and I was also thinking about that, but I was getting clear with that cheating straight away when I was talking to Virtual. I think no one of you actually know that, but you know, Virtual contacted me beforehand, and like before the whole drama, before I knew over this because of the DX tweak. And then I already knew that Virtual was suspecting Riolu to cheat. And he was claiming that he is not cheating. So he was always claiming and also saying to us that he is not cheating. So we as friends, like Shorty and me, for example, maybe me more because I know him just better than him, we are just disappointed. But for me, for example, I straight away said to him, yeah, I also used this cheat engine thing, you know, because I didn't want to get an advantage over other people. But I think they're just in their mind and just want to get that perfect time and beat those people regardless what is happening. They just want to get it, and they don't care if they cheat, if they spend 1,000. Okay, maybe they care about the time, but you know, they just think about themselves and not about others. And I think that's only developing over the time because they don't really like got busted or didn't get the feeling that they did anything wrong, and that's why they have the attitude, I think, in this way. And yeah, it's definitely a pretty big problem when it comes to cheaters, because the cheaters don't regret that they cheated, they only regret that they got caught, right?
Well, some of them definitely.
That's a very, you know, it's a very damning point to make, and that's something which, you know, when we originally discussed this, why I was so heavy on the fact that that I looked down on people a lot more because they'd only came out with the fact they cheated once they had got caught. Not one person had came out with this and, you know, said that they'd been cheating before, you know, this report came out, or before they'd been contacted by someone who knew the fact that they cheated. And that was something that definitely put so much more of a negative twist on this tale for me personally. But I mean,
and that's what I'm sorry to interrupt you there. That's what I'm actually regretting, that I didn't contact people beforehand, that, you know, I knew that this was possible, because I've seen that this was faster, but I just discarded this idea because Stadium is so terrible to play on that. And you know, there's Island, of course. Yeah, there's also a very prestigious environment, especially with those things. But it was really surprisingly for me to see that Stadium was cheated, and then I got it into, like, I forgot over this. But I think this could have been avoided by just maybe even me or someone else who knew about that this is possible. Things could done straight, and I'm actually regretting that, you know. And that's maybe I don't want to say that, but it's weird because I actually regret that I cheated, because I'm a clean player, you know. Of course, comments were saying the opposite or saying something else, but you know, I think that cheating is not a good thing, and I live with the full consequences. I admit it, I cheated, but you know, it's something else than doing, let's say, dozens of WRs, I think. Sorry that I interrupted you there, but I wanted to get that thought straight.
I was just going to say, Shorty, I mean, what's the kind of way back for these people? Is there a way back? Is there a way that they can now reintegrate themselves at all, do you think?
Oh, well, I mean, at least Trackmania definitely has, like, most likely some psychological problems. I mean, if he deals with them, then at least he can maybe try playing something like Trackmania again. But unless he fixes those problems, I think those are definitely or should be his priority compared to like maybe getting the Trackmania again. But obviously, a huge part of it depends on Nadeo. Because the Nadeos, they are going to be the ones deciding what to do with them and if they are going to get suspended and if they're going to get suspended indefinitely or just for like maybe 2 years or something like that. Because if they get banned forever, they can play the game in solo maybe or just get a second account or trying to get a second account without Nadeo noticing. But they are never going to get public with anything like that as a YouTube channel or something like that. So that's one of the factors that's going to decide if they even have the chance to get back, and if they get the chance, then I think overall, it's always like that. Even though they cheated, it's something like that. You just forget, or not really forget, but over time, over a couple of years, at some point, maybe people are always going to be people sympathizing with you. And we don't really know what Riolo is now. We didn't get a new statement from Riolo, for example, and depending on how that would look like and how people react to that, then he's still a big streamer, right? In theory, or could be, and that's gonna be interesting to see how that's gonna turn out. But in theory, definitely they could if they want to. Yeah, I kind of forgot your initial question because I'm just talking.
Yeah, just if you think they can reintegrate at all.
Yeah, but
I just hope that they're
definitely,
fine.
Yeah, they definitely can. It's people won't forget, but after a couple of years, and depending on how they're gonna deal with it themselves and how they're gonna talk about themselves and their previous their previous selves, it could potentially happen. I mean, Trabadia really didn't react well so far, but it doesn't have to mean that he's gonna stay like that and not gonna accept it at one point. I mean, Turbo said that they don't regret it, and I mean, yes, definitely a lot of cheaters don't regret it and just gonna go and see searching a new thing to cheat at or something like that. But there are already cases of people that cheated that they regret it after a time. It's not like you like from one day to another you all of a sudden start to regret it immediately. It's also something that takes a bit of time for them to understand it maybe fully and then regret it, and then that's something that others will notice in the way they speak about themselves and stuff. And if you notice that they regret it after a couple of years or like 1 year or something like that, then you can treat them with maybe respect again and also as a fellow community member.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think personally it's going to be a very, very difficult road back for a lot of these players. I think the likes of Techno doesn't really care. I mean, from what I heard, he was on his way out of the community anyway. So the impact that this would have on someone like him also, who was very closed off, he was focusing on, TMNF or TMUF, sorry, and mostly offline times that were, cheated. But I mean, for him, he's been mostly out of the scene for a while anyway. As far as I understand, he's not really been much part of the kind of United competitions that have been popping up here and there. But also, I mean, in terms of the likes of Riolu and Trabadia, I think it's not just the fact that they've cheated, which I think a lot of the people have a problem with. I think it's the fact that the exposure base that they've gained as a direct result of cheating, either enhancing their exposure base in the term of Riolu, but let's be honest, people didn't know or care who Trabadia was before he started setting the likes of this AO1 record, I mean, you had some people who were part of the community who knew who he was because he was a decent player, but through how big of a deal he made of his AO1 pursuits and how he was taking the world record and all the rest of that, significantly elevated his level of exposure. It significantly elevated the level of attention he had, and especially when he was starting to beat the world record by margins that people didn't think possible. And not only that, but now we look back on it, kind of rubbing it in the face of everyone. All of these records that he'd uploaded that were all super cool were cheated. You know, like the 84, the 83, the 82, all of them were cheated. You know, it's like when you look at it from this kind of standpoint, it's like any one of us could have done the same thing and gained a massive amount of a YouTube following from this. You know, made a fancy video about the fact that I managed to get an AO1 record. I might not have done it legitly, but if I didn't get caught, then I would have had a massive benefit from it. You know, I guarantee if Trackmania started streaming, if he was doing the same sort of thing, I don't know, but he would be straight through 100-something viewers at the very least. You know, I guarantee you that, just through his YouTube following. And that's something I look very much down upon these people personally for, and I think has leaked out into the rest of how people feel about it, in the sense that, it's not just as simple as the fact that these guys have cheated and only impacted the leaderboards of, the other people they played against. It's the fact that they've cheated and used those cheats to enhance the amount of attention they would get. Trackmania making a bunch of YouTube videos about it, Riolu making a bunch of YouTube videos about it, making a big series out of getting 200 world records and all the rest of that, using cheats and fucking STMs and all the rest of that he knew he was going to be part of, and so on and so forth. So it extends to a very wide base, and that's why I think it's really going to be difficult for these people to reintegrate back into the community, for those two in particular, because the impact they have had has been much more profound than simply leaderboards.
Yeah, I see the point.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I mean, I think we just have to look out for what will happen, also the consequences that can also affect me. I mean, I'll just take it then, because I regret what I did, and also all the other people. And I'm also looking forward to see what will happen to the likes of Riolu, or also to Techno. I mean, Techno is having a different situation. He has succeeded his study already with a very good mark and all those things. So he's standing in the life. He's not really caring about Trackmania. But a player like Riolu, it will be interesting to see what the future will bring. And I just hope that he's fine, as well as Trackmania, because at the end of the day, of course they cheated, but you just wish them all the best for them, because at the end of the day, we just want that mental health is the most important factor, even though they have done something wrong in the past. So that's what just I wanted to add there. And I think, do you guys have anything more to add to that? Because I think it's enough of cheat talk. I just cannot stand it anymore. It's like 2 weeks of that. Of course, it's very important, but still, it's full till here. I just don't want to continue talking about that. Maybe we can talk about something a bit better, and that is matchmaking, actually, because matchmaking, there has been a new update today. Ranks have been reset, and it seems that we have a more polished rank system now. Have you heard something about that, or should I just quickly go over that, or you maybe want to add something to the other factors there?
I saw a little. I saw a little video they actually. Oh no, sorry, it was a little photo they released about it with all the different rank badges, but that was pretty much it from me.
Go ahead, Toby.
Yeah, I just wanted to say those new rank icons, they're pretty neat, right? And in general, I didn't see what kind, how they changed the point system, but I just know that they changed the point system to hopefully make it better. So let's see.
Okay, so there were some adjustments with the ranks. I think it was called now silver, bronze, silver, gold, and master. And you had a reset, I think, from if you were at above 3,000 points, so RIP Cabby, you got reset to 3,000 points now. So great to me that I dropped down to 3,000, below 3,000, and then I went up to 3,100 again, because I'm again at 3,000 points. And I think the point system is now working like that. You gain the same amount of points in each division, but only the MVP points have changed. Only the MVP points have changed. I think it's 40, 20, and 10 points for a victory. Let me actually search it out real quick. I have it here. I can also post in the link on the Discord, so I'm just going to send it there. They have made those adaptations, but is it standing here actually? Oh no, wait, it's the official thingy there. Okay, now I have it. Okay, so you have different MVP points there. For Master, you get 10 points. For Gold, you get 20 points for MVP. But the initial points that you get for victory and for a loss are always 40, 30, or 20, or minus 20, minus 30, minus 40 as the best to worst player. So that is great to see, because I think one big issue in matchmaking was that you got only plus 20 points for a victory, and now you get plus, what is that? Plus 60
40?
then. Plus 60 in gold if you're MVP then. And
if you're MVP, of course, yeah.
Yeah. But
Looks pretty good. I mean, you can't really tell before, right? You're just gonna see how it develops. But it sounds good.
Okay,
it sounds pretty good to me.
Master is at 3,000 points. Okay, so they just renamed the beginner and the other thing is there. I see. So from Master you get them plus 50, but I like the concept of the initial points that you get, like the default points. But of course, if you have a bad match and you get minus 40, it could feel a bit bad. But that's just something that I wanted to add here. And also the ranking looks really good.
Mm-hmm. I mean, matchmaking in general, as we spoke about it a little before, has been a great success. You know, a lot of people have been playing it. A lot of people have been showing interest in it. I mean, as I spoke about previously, it's weird seeing so many like UK people just playing in general. But yeah, I mean, it's been very interesting to see over the last few times, but of course now changing into ranked mode as they call it. But I mean, what do you guys think of the changes in general? I mean, one of the things that people were saying is that they were looking for a little bit of a kind of mix or a balancing, the final kind of balancing act to come in for the different matchmaking levels in general. So do you guys see this as a positive change overall, or how are you guys feeling about it?
Definitely. It's definitely a positive change, because the Trackmaster rank was almost unreachable with this point system. And I think also now players are more looking forward to that, to just play to reach the Trackmaster. So we have a better incentive now to see that, and also a little bit more motivation again. Getting yet another reset, okay, maybe that was not the best thing, but I think they just tried it out, and I think with that it's fine. And just curious to see how matchmaking will work out in general. Also with the campaign now. I mean, there's already a new campaign coming out in 30 days, actually. Wow. Your time is flying. Crazy. What do you think, Shorty? I mean, you have played matchmaking with me at the beginning of it. Now I think you're not playing that active anymore. But what do you think to this one?
Well, I mean, I thought I'd give matchmaking another try once my internet is there, and I thought it would be this week, but apparently it's not gonna be this week. I mean, definitely, like, looking at this point system, it's definitely a good motivation source for me, personally, because the previous point system, as you said, it just didn't really make a lot of sense to just play, maybe. I don't know. It's gonna be interesting, definitely. The changes really look good. And I'm gonna give it another try, and let's see how it goes. Right? Can't really tell you how I like it before already. It's not gonna happen. But yeah, I mean, I heard the maps are gonna be better, right? I didn't play the campaign maps at all, even until now.
Then I'm not gonna queue up with you, man.
Wait, I'm a fast learner. And the thing is, I already said that last week, and I think this is just really amplifies it. I don't like hunting. I really don't like hunting. I literally didn't open the solo player campaign this season at all. I didn't even open it. So, yeah, right?
Shorty doesn't need to hunt.
Yeah, I just don't want to hunt, It's
just useless of hunting.
I want more no train competitions. Give me a cup of the day, like a second cup of the day at a different time of the day, like maybe maybe a little bit earlier or something at the afternoon.
10 in the morning?
With a little... No, that's too early. I'm still sleeping there. But in general, though, like a second cup of the day thing that's has a little bit of a twist to it, maybe with kind of a different format, for example. Those are the kinds of things I kind of want, because you can give me so many maps to hunt, I just wouldn't hunt them anyway, because that's not something I enjoy in Trackmania.
Back in the day when Shorty would actually hunt. I remember, guys. When Shorty was one place or one match, if I remember correctly, from qualifying for Mania Planet World Cup in 2016. That's where Shorty's like when he actually hunts. When he used to actually care about the game, you know.
Did you just say 2016?
Was it 2016 or was it 2015?
I think it was
Which
15,
one was
right?
it?
Yeah, let's not go into the details about my training for that camp.
And you know
But,
what?
yeah.
There are players like Dexter and Shorty who are like maybe the fastest tech players in Germany. There was like, you talk to them for the German Trackmania. Oh yeah, I didn't practice. I just don't care.
Dexter is different though. Dexter
Yeah,
is really different.
but you go in the same row, and I just hate it because there's so much wasted potential. You guys could be out there winning Gamers Assembly, can't stand a chance against players like Bag or Carl Jr., but you just don't care about it, and that's pretty sad actually because you're so good.
It's the story of Trackmania. I think you can say that about a really big amount of the player base.
If I practiced, no, I would go to round number 2 maybe, but that's it.
Yeah, but still, I think
That's why I'm casting.
but you can see it with a lot of players now we have in TBGL or stuff like that. A lot of those players you were like, yeah. In general, that's Trackmania. Trackmania is all about practicing, even for you. Maybe, I don't know. But in general, Trackmania is all about practicing. If you want to practice and you do that for a specific amount of time, a couple of years, then everyone can get to a really high level. There are so many underrated players in Trackmania. Like Paul said it about Papu and stuff. There's if they want to, they can. It's just having the motivation to actually training those maps alone and offline and stuff. It's really difficult.
Excuses.
It's true though. I mean, like it always kind of comes round to like, especially it happened from 0 to hero back in 2020. There's always a little discussion that happens about players that you wish played that tournament. You wish signed up for that tournament, or if they did play it, you wish they trained for that tournament. Like I always, of course, I wasn't in the inside for that, but like I remember when Dexter was in the TMGL beta, and I was just thinking, why is he not playing well? Like I was thinking Dexter's like a fucking real top challenger in tech, and then he was like, I don't think he even got out of the bottom 8, and I'm like, what is going on?
He was really dominant on the first step, but then he had point loss, and then he was demotivated for the rest of the season.
Is this just a thing with Germans? I mean, that happened to Revo as well. Like he was really good step 1,
Winter
and then just fucking like, nah,
Didn't he
like
win this map with a turnaround where Riolu completely missed the CP?
I don't remember.
I think he won that map actually.
I don't remember. But yeah, like, I mean, there's always that discussion about players. I mean, without getting too much into a tangent about what they could do. I mean, like a Javi Flyer, like what would a Javi Flyer be like in Trackmania Grand League or something like that? I remember when he signed up for what was it, from 0 to hero, people thought it wasn't real and stuff like that.
Yeah. I was also surprised for that. But yeah, some people were asking. I mean, you were just mentioning a competition. What is next for Trackmania Cups? There is Gamers Assembly coming up this weekend, but I will not cast it, and I think there won't be an English cast because this event is going from 14 to 23 in the I don't know, into midnight or something. It's way too long, and then the final will be on Sunday. And there's also the full split league that you can capture and see a cast from various streamers. Then Worldcup, I think in 5 weeks, I think. And what else is there? Is there something that I missed? The tag team tournament, maybe?
There's a tag team tournament PCL going. It's ongoing right now. I think the group stage just has ended, and the playoffs are going to start or something like that.
I thought you meant one that was coming. That was like, wait, I don't know about that.
No, not coming, but PCS.
Someone needs to sack me.
Yeah, I think that's the only one I can remember.
But yeah, it's slowing down.
We need Marius for this.
It's slowing down again before the World Cup. And I think then Zerato Cup is coming up very soon, and then also some other competitions. And then we have a bit of a summer break where we have, I think, again, some smaller competitions taking place as always. But right now it's all about like World Cup But I think there will be competitions announced. But I mean, I also looked into the Trackmania News Discord today, and I was a bit shocked because there was no real event announced. And of course, there's also the Trackmania Seasonal Team Championship, Spring 2021, which is oh no, that will take place on the 19th and 20th June. Yeah. So those are also some things. But I would just recommend you joining the Trackmania News Discord. Check out the events channel. I'm just gonna link it here in the chat, and then you guys can join that one. So there you have all the events. So that's great. The Portugal Tech Cup. Yeah, true. That's also very soon.
Yeah, get Ariugon back. Get all the old Portuguese players back. Moriah, DVD. You know, good times. Do you know it was like just a little bit of a tangent there? All of a sudden, Moriah, like I don't know how many people are familiar with him. I think he once got second in a world championship, if I do remember correctly. One of the best players to ever come out of Portugal, and then all of a sudden he signs up with some random Division 4 team for a French Division 4 team for sub tournament. And I'm like, is this real? Like, what's going on? Is this some alternate reality Moriah that I'm seeing? But yeah, I thought that was funny. But nice to see some regional tournaments popping up a little bit, and hopefully there will be some more coming up soon. But yeah, I mean, speaking of more coming up soon, we'll certainly pick up on some more subjects next week, at the very least, before I get absorbed by the supernova outside my window. But yeah, it has been an interesting episode for us today. I mean, I suppose a little bit shorter than the last one, but then again, you know, that was a little bit of an outlier in itself. But I mean, before we head off tonight, I would just once again remind you guys to check out esac.gg, as of course now the showdowns, the hourly showdowns, are now on the campaign maps, the spring campaign maps, and it is going to be spring campaign maps 19 through to 23, if I do believe. So it is going to be a 5-map pack, and it is now available on play.esac.gg. And a big thanks once again to Erwin, who is bringing us the podcast from the background once and as always. However, that has been it from us, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, I will remind you guys to give us a little message on Twitter, Discord, any of the social links you find or you do have for us. Hit us up a little bit, and if you have any questions, if you have any subjects you wish for us to address, and we will certainly get to it. But anything else at all from either of you guys for our Tuesday night?
No, I think that was it.
No, I think that was it. I will join some matchmaking afterwards with Janik, and then we're gonna have a great talk next week. Hopefully not too much drama coming up till the next week. Yeah, I think with that, just goodbye. Thanks for watching, and see ya in 1 week. Goodbye.
See you later.
Yeah, goodbye.